When we were here last year as the Chief Operating Officer overseeing over 100,000 employees at the Justice Department, you made a pledge that if victims came forward to the FBI, to the Justice Department, national security, lawyers, and prosecutors, that you would take action and bring pain to the adversary. So I wanted to check in a year later and see how that's been going.
Well, first of all, thanks very much. It's great to be back and nice to be on stage with you, John. Although I don't know if the whole adage about like the student becomes the teacher and grades the former boss here, so I don't know about that. Look, I think what we can say about the last year is, in a word, this has been a year of action for the Justice Department in our efforts to pivot to a strategy of disruption, meaning we are doing everything we can to prevent, to disrupt, to be victim-centered in all of our work. And I think that's what you've seen us do over the last year. Just a little refresher here. We started off the year of 2023 with the Hive operation, top 5 ransomware variant, where we quite literally hacked the hackers, infiltrated that network using our lawful tools, a warrant, where we sat in wait at what I called, I think, last year, a 21st century cyber stakeout, swiped those decryption keys, provided them to legions and legions of victims, preventing the payment of over $130 million of ransomware payments. That was a centerpiece, and I think it was a proof point of our victim-centered strategy. Fast forward to twice in the last 2 months, we have wiped out nation-state malware from routers across hundreds of compromised computers. I am, of course, referring to the Chinese and to the PRC-affiliated Volt Typhoon malware and botnet network that was all over hundreds of routers in the United States. And this was a moment to point out that the Chinese affiliated botnet was, again, lying in wait, waiting to launch for a time of crisis or conflict. And this was a real game changer. And just yesterday, we announced the disruption of a GRU-affiliated botnet, which also had compromised hundreds of routers, and they're transforming that infrastructure to act as a cyber espionage platform. So, bottom line, year of action, focused on helping victims, focused on preventing and disrupting whenever and however we can, and working closely with our partners quite literally across the world and across the private sector.
And following up on that, and here at this transatlantic conference, what do you think? I think many folks equate law enforcement, prosecutors, and law enforcement agents with handcuffs and prison sentences, but what you've described as a different approach. Could you explain a little bit that approach?
Sure. Now, I don't want folks to think we've left the handcuffs at home and are not still committed to prosecuting and holding accountable individuals when and where we can, and we have done that repeatedly, working with our international partners, seeking extradition, having people face justice in the courts. And we are doing that time and again. But that is not the be-all and the end-all. We have directed our prosecutors to look across their operations, across their investigations, and at every single time, ask yourselves, can I take a disruptive action? Can I prevent the next victim? Can I help use our tools in ways that are new and creative? For instance, follow that money, track it through the blockchain, get it back and provide it to the victims, as we did in the Colonial Pipeline case. Do new ways, think in new ways about how we can use very traditional tools like warrants, as we did in the Hive operation. So you're going to continue to see that same tempo of prevention-focused, disruption-focused, victim-centered action, and you're going to see it at the same tempo and pace, and I would say stay tuned.
For more action to come?
Exactly right.
And so you've described a couple different approaches. So one is arrest and extradition. I think there was one just yesterday of a prominent Russian cyber criminal. You've also mentioned hacking the hacker and getting the decryption key, which I know that you provided for a period of time secretly to victims so that the bad guys didn't know why their technique wasn't working and that the key...
Very, very frustrating. Very frustrating to them.
And you also mentioned with Colonial Pipeline, using legal process, getting the money back from the crooks, so stealing the money back from their wallets overseas. I wanted to follow up on that last one.
Sure.
Because you've talked about follow the money. You mentioned it here. What else are you doing to deprive the criminals of the ecosystem that they use to get money from victims?
Well, look, the lifeblood of this ecosystem, which, as you all know, has many constituent parts, from the mixers to the exchanges to the initial access brokers, you name it. But the lifeblood of the ransomware ecosystem is, of course, crypto. It is quite literally the money that fuels it, whether it's the crypto that's extorted and then that is laundered for the benefit of the ransomware actors. So we're going after that lifeblood, as you said, following the money and taking it back, but also disrupting the ecosystem that fuels it. So case in point, which you may not think is relevant at a cyber conference, but late last year, we secured the guilty pleas from the company and the CEO of Binance, of course, the largest cryptocurrency exchange in the world. And why did we do that? We did that to send the signal that if you are operating a money service, whether it's virtual or fiat, whether it is online or offline, you've got to follow U.S. law. Virtual does not mean above the law. So we went after to disrupt that ecosystem because, as we know, Binance was used to launder vast amounts of illicit crypto payments. Indeed, our investigation showed over $1 billion in illicit payments flowing through that exchange by sanctioned entities and ransomware actors among them. So we wanted to show that we are going to take action across the ecosystem, including in a major corporation like Binance.
And that, as you said, it helps prevent both the movement of funds to evade sanctions and also ransomware. I want to circle back to a case that's gotten a lot of attention over the last couple days at this conference, which was the case that you mentioned against China for preparatory cyber activities. And there's been a question here: why now? Why is the United States talking about this publicly? What should it mean to your allies overseas? You've approached it from a slightly different perspective when talking about it now, because you talked about action that was taken. Could you walk through that approach, and do you have an answer to the question, why now?
Well, why now is to show, of course, we're going to take action whenever and wherever we can, as I said, to expose this activity, to help victims, to let them know what is going on these platforms. And we thought it was incredibly important to expose this and to show this kind of game-changing activity undertaken by these Chinese actors, right? I mean, the idea that this was not about, we know that malicious cyber actors and Chinese-affiliated malicious cyber actors have been trying to steal intellectual property, steal the nation's secrets, et cetera. That is something we have exposed, and you worked very hard when you were in government to do that. But in this instance, it was lying in wait, positioning for a time of conflict or crisis. And in the world today, we thought it was very important to make that clear and point that out.
And do you think that type of activity by Chinese government actors is occurring only in the United States, or is it something that our allies overseas need to be watching for as well?
Obviously, this audience and everyone hopefully watching online, nobody should think that they are immune obviously not from a persistent and focused and I think dedicated actor like the malicious Chinese actors that we've pointed out in Volt Typhoon.
And you've talked already about many different tools, legal tools that the department can use, from arrests to seizures of currency to disruption of the command and control of botnets. But I think another part of your job is overseeing foreign investment into the United States and the national security risks that can pose. And I know there are many parallel regimes now in Europe. Part of the change in the US was starting to treat privacy information, personally identifiable information in bulk as a national security risk. And I wanted to see where you think your current authorities are now, and is there more action you plan to take in that space?
Well, look, I think we know that adversary nations, rogue nation states, authoritarian nations see data as a strategic resource. We've got to see it the same way. And I think those of us in law enforcement and national security are very focused, rightly, on protecting the backdoor efforts, if you will, of gaining strategic resources, whether it's technology or indeed data, which is this strategic resource. And I think we've done a lot over time to strengthen our efforts to close and tighten that back door. I think we also have to focus on the front door, right? And in a world where we all should be concerned about protections of privacy and the ability of huge data sets to fuel digital authoritarianism in the hands of malicious and autocratic actors, we need to be lining up our tools to make sure we're doing everything we can to also tighten the front door, for instance, with the ability to buy on a commercial level and acquire through various transactions huge, oftentimes very sensitive data sets.
And underlying that, and we look forward to seeing what's to come on that front, underlying that pivot towards even commercial sales of large data sets that contain information like health information or other information, I know is thinking about how autocratic regimes might use the emerging technology of AI. Just this week, I think 2 days ago now, in the United Kingdom, you announced a new program at the Justice Department to address AI. Could you tell us about that?
Sure, I did a few things. I spoke at Oxford a few days ago to talk about how we in the Justice Department are approaching the transformational impacts of AI, from the concerns we all should have about its potential to impact election security to broader impacts on the criminal justice system and the ability to exacerbate existing biases and have impacts on privacy. So we're doing a few things. On the issue around data and protecting technology, we launched something called the Disruptive Technology Strike Force last year, which is focused on working with our partners and in an intelligence-led way, going after adversaries who are trying to quite literally siphon off our most sensitive technologies, disruptive technologies like semiconductor chips that are so essential to building AI systems. And what we decided is, and what I directed this week, is we have to put AI at the very top of that enforcement priority list. So going after those adversaries who are violating sanctions regimes, violating our export control laws to siphon off technology, and ultimately use it against us. We also are looking quite hard at how AI can enhance, quite literally, the danger associated with crimes. So we have long, in the United States, applied more severe penalties and stiffer sentences to individuals who use a gun to facilitate a crime because it enhances the danger to that crime. Well, the same can be true of the malicious use of AI. So this week, I've directed our prosecutors to seek stiffer sentences involving offenses that are made significantly more dangerous by the use of AI. This is about showing we are focused on deterrence and exerting deterrence and showing that there will be consequences for the malicious use of this technology. And then finally, John, we're taking a very hard look at the guardrails that we need to employ in the Justice Department for the use of this technology. It has great promise for all the ways that we know and are discussing in these conferences, but it also poses great peril if it is used irresponsibly and unethically. So we are convening our experts internally, but we've got to listen beyond our walls. We have to get different perspectives. So I announced a new initiative just a few days ago called Justice AI, and that is going to be a series of convenings where we are reaching out and we're talking to civil society, to privacy advocates, to science, to academia, to industry, to understand a range of perspectives, because that's the way we're going to make the best use and also guard against the risks posed by what is truly the ultimate disruptive technology.
Well, Lisa, I've had the privilege to work with you and see you as a career prosecutor, as a chief of staff of the FBI, as an advisor to presidents, and now in your current role. And I know how seriously you take that dialogue and listening to the perspective of those in private sector and others, and I also know that's what this conference is all about. So on behalf of everyone here, I wanted to thank you for your leadership at the department and for your comments today. Thank you.
Thanks very much.